Welcome back to week number 2 of the Hearthstone Collegiate Championships. We're about to get into match number 2. My name's Cora, and joining me for this week is going to be my good pal, Dr. J. And one match down. How are you feeling now? Did you get some of those jitters out? And
I'm feeling good. I got a little bit of the jitters out. You know, it's always nervous coming and having to compete with my casting with this girl right here.
It seemed like you were a little bit nervous for the reason that...
I was a little bit nervous. My reasoning for that was...
my justification.
Reason thereof.
No. Well, for whatever reason it may be, it's great to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to come and join me and get a little bit more experience behind the desk. But let's take a look at our second match of the day. It's going to be Suny Canton taking on Texas Tech. And I'm seeing mutual Paladin bans and mutual disrespect of Warlock.
No respect for their elders or Warlock from Suny Canton or Texas Tech. They are going for the strategy of, you know, let's bring a Dex that beat Warlock, which, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So from Texas Tech, this may be a Secret Mage or a Quest Mage, not really sure. Both Priests are most likely going to go ahead and be Inner Fire Priest. Maybe we'll see some Control Dragon Priest. I would say Inner Fire Priest, though. Both Warlocks, maybe Zoo. I would say most likely Control Warlock or Q-Block. And that Druid coming out from Suny Canton, I'm just going to guess it's Jade Druid, but it's really hard to say with a leave Warlock up. I mean, maybe they feel like they can beat the Q-Block if it is Q-Block. And from Suny Canton, we have Keo, Woofer 1999, and Holden, Sports Management, Game Design, and Graphic Design, respectively. 3 unique, very unique, that I haven't seen too many of majors.
Yeah, we did actually see this team on stream last week. Unfortunately, they did lose. I believe it was a 3-1 victory for their opponents. And I think they're also... I'm not actually sure what their match record is, but I believe they lost both of their first 2 matches. So they've got some ground to make up, but they have a very different lineup than they did last week. So I'm interested to see how they've changed after those first couple of losses and what they're really doing to try and get those wins now moving forward. And their opponents, it is Texas Tech, Ninja BRS, Cowboys 367, and Flores 007. Political science, computer science, and computer science. So we've got the liberal arts majors on one side and the sciences on the other.
And with a name like 007, you know they are ready for business. And then we see Texas Tech getting ready for their match inside of probably one of their rooms. You know, I recognize names from both of these sides. Yeah. Keo is actually a personal friend of mine. I met him. He was one of the first players I met when I was getting into the competitive Hearthstone scene. And from the other side, I recognize the name of Cowboy 367, I believe it is. I've seen, I believe he has qualified for an HCT playoffs in the past, on top of, you know, he's a ladder grinder as well. So we can see from these developed programs more veteran Hearthstone players.
Yeah, perhaps more names that you at home would recognize if you yourself have been playing on ladder or in open cups, or just from watching HCT playoffs like you had said, maybe some of these names you would actually recognize. But for Keo, yes, we saw him on stream last week. He is also somebody that I am familiar with. And it seems like he's taken a bit of a leadership position on this team. His 2 teammates do play the game, and I believe one of them actually had a full golden OTK control paladin
I saw that.
deck
I was
last week,
very
which was
proud
like
of him because
beautiful.
If there's anything to impress Dr. J with, it is
fully
golden cards and golden decks. I love them. I go out of my way to craft them. I drop money on the game. I am not free to play. I am free to buy golden cards.
And I'm cheap because I have college loans to
Just
pay
like
off.
you were saying earlier, Cora, one of us is wrong and one of us is Dr. J.
It may have been a little bit different when I said it, but kudos. I will accept it the other way around. Game 1 is going to be a Priest Mirror, and it looks to be Spiteful Priest for Texas Tech for Suny Canton. Probably Spiteful Priest as well, because I don't think you're going to see Fairy Dragon in combo.
Difficult to say. Fairy Dragon, not typically in combo Priest. I'm going to lean more towards the idea of it being the Spiteful Priest. And even Texas Tech, I mean, I guess technically you couldn't say it's Spiteful Priest yet, but I would say with Cobalt Scalebane pretty safely that it's Spiteful Priest. So we're going to have some big spell on big spell action. We had some dude action earlier. Now we're getting some dragon spell action of big proportions.
The dudes are out and the spiteful dudes are in. They're so angry.
And I'm not too familiar with this matchup. I don't typically play Spiteful Priest. Typically, I play Inner Fire Priest if I do want to play a Priest list. So it's going to be interesting to see how this matchup pans out. It seems that whichever one of the Priest decks can steamroll the board and take value trades out of control is going to be the winner. So tools like Fairy Dragon, Nether Spite, and this Twilight Drake are going to be very important to get on live early. Even like a Fairy Dragon into a Cabal Talon Priest is pretty important, just for the reason that you are kind of snowballing as much as possible. Mind controls can get pretty wonky because, you know, sometimes they just mind control back and forth. And one thing that the Spiteful Priest has an issue dealing with, however, is that chip damage. You know, the only card they have in their deck to deal chip damage with is Dustbreaker. So value trades go a long way in these kinds of matchups.
So this is a deck that I played a pretty good amount of last season, probably 100 games or so. And in the mirror, the card that you most want to have is 100% Spiteful Summoner. If you have it on turn 5 or 6 and your opponent does not, that's going to be the backbreaker. But it is a tempo mirror matchup.
Yes.
So you're absolutely correct. Get on the board early. Cabal Talon Priest, Twilight Drake, Cobalt Scalebane, just to build up a big board of stuff, and then Spiteful Summoner is sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back. If you have the early turns to, you know, set that precedent for the Spiteful Summoner turn. If you miss out on the early game and just have the Spiteful, but your opponent has the early game, then things still go a little bit even. It's going to depend really on who misses an important turn first.
That makes sense. And it also makes sense that Spiteful Summoner is such an important card in this matchup because they don't call it Spiteful Priest for no reason. Another thing with this matchup is the reason Spiteful Summoner is so important is because typically you'll be playing one minion a turn, but then you finally get to either turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, and you get to play Spiteful Summoner, and you get to play 2 large minions. The 4/4 can either up trade or it can get value trades, and typically sometimes you hit something with enormous amounts of health, like a Ultrasaur, 7/14.
Yeah.
How do they deal with it?
They don't, because, like you said, the only counterplay that Spiteful Priest really has is Dustbreaker, which of course is significantly better against aggressive decks in the mid game. In this matchup, you're not going to get a lot of use out of Dustbreaker. Maybe 2 Dustbreakers together, but 1 Dustbreaker not going to be super impactful. And then Mind Control you don't have access to until turn 10. Spiteful Summoner is going to be online far before that. So the counterplay for a big minion coming out of the Spiteful Summoner is a board that is already there, or that Twilight Acolyte to some extent.
And so both of these teams have very similar curves, at least up until this turn 4 part. They've had a 2-drop, they've had a pseudo 3-drop. They're both going to have Twilight Drakes. One of the major differences I'm seeing right now that might just put Texas Tech ahead of Suny Canton is they're going to be able to coin Spiteful Summoner. Now, Suny Canton does have Spiteful Summoner, but, you know, like I was mentioning earlier, Spiteful Summoner first means that you can dictate the trades. That's one of the most important things in Hearthstone, is being able to play select cards before your opponent. That's why, for instance, if we go to another matchup like Murloc Paladin, being on the play for Murloc Paladin increases your win rate by a fair amount, for the reason that you get to play your Murloc first, and you get to dictate whether it value trades or goes face or does something else.
Yeah, that's a great point. Pretty much any aggressive or tempo-based deck, if they have a curve starting from turn 1, they want to be on the play. You want to have the opportunity to get ahead of your opponent and to stay ahead of your opponent because you don't have the reactive tools of a control deck.
And sometimes it's interesting to see, you know, in matchups like this, it doesn't matter as much to be on the play for the reason that, you know, their kind of board pressure, their value trading doesn't come into play until turns 3, 4, 5, where having the coin might be more beneficial. Having the coin here is obviously more beneficial for the reason that Spiteful Summoner is going to come online first, and Suny Canton really has no play here. They have to bump into another Spite Historian and Hero Power.
So this is pretty much exactly what I was talking about. This is the first missed turn. This is the turn that Suny Canton was unable to develop anything. So even though they have Spiteful Summoner and Grand Archivist in hand, well, now that they've drawn both Mind Controls, that Archivist is going to be significantly weaker, and they missed an opportunity to play Draconid Operative or Cobalt Scalebane. Texas Tech can coin out the Spiteful Summoner this turn if they want to. They don't even necessarily have to. They could play a 5-drop, play the Summoner, and then choose to coin out an Archivist or a Free from Amber and make their later turns a little bit smoother. But no, they are just going to put as much pressure on as fast as possible. I like this. They know what this matchup's all about, and they're going to get one of the best 10 drops in the game. One that certainly gives me nightmares at times.
I didn't know Barnes costed 6 mana.
But they gave him one more attack. Isn't that nice?
They gave him one more attack, and it didn't summon a 1/1. Summon a 10/10.
What? And a Tar Creeper.
Gosh. And
pretty good.
That is just... That's just backbreaking for Suny Canton. I don't think Suny Canton's going to live long enough to mind control that, and I don't think Suny Canton's going to... I think this is just game over. I mean, what does Suny Canton do here? I mean, obviously they can nullify the attack from the Yasiraj, but the Yasiraj is going to be pulling out minions each turn. And we were talking about, this is a tempo matchup. Having a 2/10 that your opponent cannot deal with, that pulls out a free minion every turn, is a little ridiculous. But, oh, that's actually really cute. What if Suny Canton plays Cabal Shadow Priest, ends up drawing it?
That would be pretty spicy.
That would, but I think it might be a bit too slow for what's currently going on here. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Spiteful Summoner trade into the 10/4, then play... I would like to...
Play anything. And I don't think it matters.
It's actually interesting to think about which one is the best one to play. If you play Cabal Shadow Priest, you take the Northshire Cleric, deny any kind of draw. You also take a minion from the board. If you play the Cobalt Scalebane, you're applying more pressure over time. If you take the Draconoid Operative, you are putting a large minion on board while also gaining more resources. So I think right now they're in the stage of the game where they can afford to take these trades and just kind of play maybe a value game, but it's hard to say. I almost wouldn't mind the Scalebane. I kind of like the Scalebane. I'm leaning towards the Scalebane for the reason that you want to apply as much pressure as possible before they can get to mind control, free from Amber, and crazy things can start happening.
This is a matchup where just stats on board will win you the game.
Yes.
Utility's great. Draconid Operative to find you more choices for the following turns would be phenomenal, but stats on board is going to win you the game. And Suny Canton, they do have the Cabal Shadow Priest. They steal that Yasiraj. The Cabal Song Stealer is pulled out, and now...
They can just steal it back.
Oh, gross. Yeah. Well, that's probably
what if this game just becomes Cabal Shadow Priest stealing it back and forth, and then they mind control it back and forth, and it becomes, instead of Hearthstone, we play Battle over Yasiraj.
We're playing ping pong.
Yeah, so it looks like it was Texas Tech serve there, and they got it back.
It's going to be point to Texas Tech.
15 love, Texas Tech.
Oh, jeez. Well, I mean, this is interesting. This is cute, but Texas Tech still just has so many more stats on the board, and their hand quality is good enough, I think. I don't think 2 mind controls is going to be
It's not going to be enough, and mind controlling a 2/9 is not what they want to do, especially with so much damage represented on board. I mean, this is, slowly but surely, this is Texas Tech's game, unless there is... I'm pretty sure they're just dead next turn. They're definitely dead next turn. I was going to say maybe there's Spiteful Summoner into Free from Amber, because they're guaranteed Free from Amber, and then they get Anomalous.
And then they're dead.
They are dead.
But that'd
I was
be fun.
saying maybe if they had more health.
If they had more health, Anomalous would be awesome here. I mean, at that point, you might as well Grand Archivist for the Free from Amber, because it has more stats on board, I guess. But no,
this way you
what
get to fit in
age
a
are you
hero
pulling?
power.
This is true. Are you ever safe at 20?
Geosculptor, yip.
That's going to give you a Wisp or a Snow Flipper Penguin.
I think
That's
the
so
only way
good.
they live is if somehow Wild comes back into rotation and they get the target dummy.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately,
Target
that
dummy's
world
pretty
does not
good.
exist. And I believe this is just over lethal. This is super lethal. And Texas Tech going to take the first one.
The addition of the Cabal Shadow Priests into these lists is very interesting. I had been seeing Cabal Shadow Priest in different variations of Priest that were also making use of the Twilight Acolytes, of course, to facilitate the Cabal Shadow Priest steals. But in Spiteful Priest, it's pretty cool.
I've started to see maybe a one of or two of start to come up in Spiteful Priest, and I'm trying to wrap my head around why. I mean, sometimes just taking another minion is just good enough. Another thing that's been coming up in Spiteful Priest in order to beat Inner Fire Priest is Skulking Geist. Spiteful Priests have been running Skulking Geist. That way they can get rid of the Inner Fires and make sure that they have a better win rate against Inner Fire Priest.
Well, again, neither of these teams banned away Warlock. So Twilight Acolyte plus Cabal Shadow Priest stealing a Void Lord or stealing a Carnivorous Cube that's eaten up Doom Guards, for instance, is very powerful. So I can certainly see if you were planning on not banning Warlock, you're going to want to have 2 copies of that Cabal Shadow Priest in your Priest deck.
Definitely makes sense. And sometimes with Priests, they can actually become the Warlock. A lot of times with Operative, I know it's funny to say, but a lot of times when the Priest wins, they just become the Warlock. You know, they Draconoid Operative into a Gul'dan or an Azoth. They take Void Lords, and then they're one with Warlock nature.
They just have more cards left in their deck by the time the Warlock's fatiguing.
Yes, that as well.
Yeah, and then they still have the giant demon swings at the end of the game because they've taken all your Void Lords, and the Warlock is left with a whole lot of justice.
What do you mean he's left with a whole lot of justice? Not Paladins, Warlock. He's left with a whole lot of justice. I guess justice is the best word. And now we're going into game number 2, looking like Texas Tech on the Secret Tempo Mage, and Suny Canton on the Spiteful Priest again. And this is another one of those matchups where Texas Tech typically has dead cards for the reason that I was mentioning earlier, how Hunter kind of plays around explosive runes. Well, Texas Tech with the Secret Mage, their counterspells aren't as efficient as you typically would like them to be.
Yeah.
Typically you want them blocking, let's say, AoE or removal, but just playing a counterspell may come into play later with such large spells, but a lot of times Suny Canton doesn't even need to play those spells against Secret Mage. They just play Dustbreaker, and that's another important card that Suny Canton's going to be looking for here is the Dustbreaker, and they do have Netherspite. Going to want to find that Dustbreaker because it's one of the best cards against Secret Mage. All of the Secret Mage minions, except for Cabal Crystal Runner, all have 3 or lower health. So that Dustbreaker, or as I like to call it, Duckbreaker.
Yes, he would break ducks, I would think.
He does break ducks. Ducks have less than 3 health.
Big opponent of the ducks, does not like them.
Is a very good card in this matchup.
And like you were saying before, Secret Mage also struggles against very aggressive decks. This Priest deck can be very aggressive. I think we're seeing a solid 1-2-3 curve here from Suny Canton that can certainly go the distance against the pressure from Texas Tech. Maybe even just go face and pressure him out of the game pretty early on. Plus, you have the addition of that lesser heal to mitigate some of the damage from Texas Tech. Maybe make some of those damage totals a little bit more awkward if they do manage to find All in F. So this all in all is a tough one for Texas Tech, but not unwinnable. It's just going to require that they find All in F, I think, very early on, and then are able to have a solid curve from then on out. The Potion of Polymorph is actually going to be a really nice inclusion. You obviously put that into this deck for Warlock, but if you can manage to hit a Twilight Drake or a Draconid Operative, say, then you get a bit of a tempo bonus there.
The turn 2 play from Suny Canton was very interesting. They decided to go with a route that drew them more cards instead of playing more onto the board. And I typically, in my experiences with this matchup, you really want to play onto the board because one thing that happens is you take too much damage in the early game from the minions. They have a Luneth, and they can just burn you out of the game. So they opted to... I think their reasoning behind it is they saw the Tar Creeper, and they said this Tar Creeper is going to come down. We can afford to take this draw now, and it's going to eat up a lot of damage. But I almost would have liked to have seen the Fairy Dragon just come down to contest the Mana Worm, because it almost forces Texas Tech to play a spell, because that Fairy Dragon is going to kill that Mana Worm. I don't think there's any way that it doesn't, for the reason that it can't be targetable by Frostbolt. It doesn't die to anything except the Mana Worm.
Yeah.
Mage can't do anything.
It would have been a very fragile turn to Frostbolt. Exactly. And I think that that is what Suny Canton was playing around there. The Frostbolt into the Northshire Cleric, the Mana Worm into the Fairy Dragon. But even then, Suny Canton would have had initiative. They would have been able to play a 3 mana cost minion, and then Texas Tech would have still been in the position of responding. So here, Texas Tech is ahead on the board. They've been able to leverage their spells to keep this Mana Worm alive because Suny Canton chose not to play the Fairy Dragon. And I get it, because they still have the Fairy Dragon in hand, now the Nether Spite is live, now maybe they can find a Duskbreaker because they haven't found another dragon. But still, I do think that I also would have played that Fairy Dragon on turn 2 and just gotten that Mana Worm off the board early.
And they didn't even necessarily need to play the Fairy Dragon. They would have gotten away with another Spite Historian just looking for that Duskbreaker if Texas Tech did have that Mana Worm into Arcanologist, into... forget the 4-3's name. Quiz me now. Quiz, now. Quickly.
Kieran Tormage.
Kieran Tormage. The, nice, that was close.
I always think Cabal. I'm like, Cabal,
Cabal,
no.
Kieran Tormage of Crystal running secretness.
Don't even get me started on all the Murloc names. I need flashcards for those.
I say 1-2 man, 1-3 man. Or I probably shouldn't say man. I probably should say fish. 1-2 fish, 1-3 fish.
1 fish, 2 fish.
Oh, public service announcement.
Fish.
Public service announcement. Cora earlier, I'm looking at it right now, drew a fish and put legs on it and called it a Murloc. Don't think you can just draw a fish, put legs on it, and call it a Murloc. Those are the same people that like pineapple on their pizza and pour milk in.
I never claimed to be an artist, Jay. I'm an artist in many ways, but drawing is not one of them. Not my strong suit. But you know, I was pretty proud of Little Murloc.
So back to the current Hearthstone game.
Yes,
being
please,
played
please.
Here. There were some decisions made from Texas Tech that could have gone a little bit differently. They opted to go for more of a board plan by playing the 3-2, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, discounting the mana on the Potion of Polymorph, most likely hoping that Suny Canton could only play, say, a Cobalt Scalebane or a Draconic Operative that they want to play on turn 5. It's not going to work out for them here. They ended up having the Duskbreaker and clearing the entire board, and with that, that's one of the breaking points that a lot of players have a hard decision making in Secret Mage. When do I ignore the board and go face? Now, Suny Canton's still at 27 health. Now, there's 13 damage. One thing important they have to manage is they have to find the extra 14 damage somewhere. And with all of that, they have to get through the Priest Hero Power.
That's a very tough point in the game to identify. But at some point, this Burn Mage deck needs to transition from a board plan to a face plan. When is it? Is it too late now for them even to make that transition? And I understand they likely didn't think that they had the resources necessary to burn out their opponent at that point and to just go full face and disregard any counterplay from Suny Canton. So I understand that the line that they took, but without Aleneth this way, they don't have the resources either. So the Charged Devil Sword from Suny Canton was a very fortunate drop off of the Summoner, but is it even necessary? Probably not. They just have so many more resources than
There's
Texas
so many more
Tech.
resources, so much more health. It would have been interesting to see Texas Tech maybe think about going face with the 2-3 and the Mana Worm.
Yeah, I think
it
it would have been 6 damage.
Because it would have been 6 damage. Let's say they don't get the Charged Devil Sword, and that 5 damage connects. That's 11 damage. They only need to find 3 more with their current hand.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's being results oriented, looking at both hands. You can see that they had the Duskbreaker. They were going to clear up the board, but one thing to consider is, if they have that Duskbreaker, if they're going to clear up the board, I mean, they're going to clear up the board anyways.
And the Duskbreaker was just pulled from the Nether Spite Historian, which even though there is an increased percentage chance to find Duskbreaker because it is a class card, there was no guarantee that Suny Canton had gotten it. So there certainly would have been justification for Texas Tech to disregard that Nether Spite pull and to just go full face and hope that they don't have the Duskbreaker. There's no way for them to possibly clear off the cards on the board then for Texas Tech. So it was not an easy turn by any means, but it is one that could have gone either way. Now, I think they would have struggled either way to be able to finish off this game.
Yes, they definitely would have.
It's very difficult to say which of these lines would have been better, but it's definitely something that you want to give consideration to.
As any Hearthstone player, you have to always be open-minded to considering, were those trades necessary? Should I have gone face earlier? Should I have traded here? I mean, there was even one point where Texas Tech put the 3/2 Mana Worm into the 1/3.
Yeah.
When does the 1/3 represent anything different math-wise on the board? And I'm pretty sure it doesn't, unless there may be some obscure thing I'm thinking of. Maybe they were thinking of playing around the Shadow Ascendant, coming down on the future turn and buffing it up. But, you know, that's 3 damage. They missed 3 damage there, possibly. And then later on, let's say they missed 6 damage. Well, now we're at 9 damage. Let's say the Charged Devilsaur never happened and another 5 damage connected. That's 14 damage. They had Frostbolt, Firelands Portal. They picked up a Fireball just now. That would have nullified 3 of the Priest hero powers. Maybe they would have won.
And Texas Tech with the Fireball into the Tar Creeper to try and negate Suny Canton from being able to draw a card with that Northshire Cleric. But clearing off the Twilight Drake certainly would have meant that Texas Tech would survive for longer. So that Fireball itself was a difficult decision to make. Aggressive decks like this Secret Mage, sometimes they play themselves. Sometimes it's really freaking hard to find the path to victory. If you don't have Alineth, you're working on very limited resources. This deck's not straightforward at all.
Yeah, it's about managing your damage and finding out where to put it, when to put it. And luckily for Texas Tech right now, Suny Canton's hand is just so awkward. They can't play either of the spells because they know it's a counterspell up. They want to hold on to Dustbreaker in order to answer any wide boards if the Alunith gets drawn. They want to hold on to the Twilight Acolyte instead of playing a 3-mana 2/4 because it will, if they Firelands Portal into a minion they can't deal with, like an Earth Elemental, or if they draw the other Cabal Crystal Runner, well, they're going to need it for that. And they have to hold on to the Fairy Dragon to be able to enable all of this. So they literally can't play nothing.
That's unfortunate because they want to be pressuring right now. Suny Canton are in the driver's seat. They need to be putting stats on the board and hitting face. And they can't because they also need to be reactive. Because with an Alineth draw, Texas Tech would suddenly be in the position to win the game in 3 turns.
It's really hard to say about which of these minions Suny Canton can even afford to play. If you rationalize all of them, then the Dustbreaker you would want to save because not only does it clear up some of your own board, it also is good against wider board states if they say they draw a Lunith. For another reason, the Twilight Acolyte you want to save for those minions, but I mean the Twilight Acolyte, sometimes they don't have those larger minions. They would have to have Firelands Portal or the 5/5. I believe those are the only 2 minions that you would want to save it for.
Ooh, the Glyph's a nice draw.
Glyph is a good draw. They're going to need some kind of gas going here. And
Frost Nova buys us a turn.
But the issue with that is they haven't even been doing damage face.
No. No. Ideally,
Suny
you play
Canton's at
Frost Nova
26,
and
Cora.
you Fireball a face.
Typically, you Frost Nova, and next turn you Alex Strasza them, and then
bam, bam, dead, dead. Yeah, no, this was just not at all the game that Texas Tech wanted to have. They had a very solid early start. Mana Worm into Arcanologist, into Secret. Cabal Crystal Runner with a Secret on turn 5. It was strong. Suny Canton is just a deck that is reasonably well positioned to outlast.
And it almost looks like Texas Tech is now playing a Control Mage style, where they clear up every single one of Suny Canton's minions. Please. I want to see it.
The BM.
I want to see the Alunith take, but I know it's not correct.
No.
I would love to see
if you take
Anduin holding on to Alunith.
Oh,
just mocking Texas Tech, saying, look what we have.
I'm going to draw so many cards. Nah, but the Frostbolt gets through the counterspell, and then Suny Canton can... Or the Free from Amber gets through the counterspell, and then they can Frostbolt face.
For the added damage, yes. And that, I mean, that's lethal as we can see it right here. Next turn, and I mean, unless they Pyroblast the 5/5 Ducky Breaker,
I would
that's game.
not.
Yeah, I would not
I would
use.
never do
I would
that.
not use the one card that I'm hoping to end the game with to kill up a 5/5.
But they've done 5 damage to face this game. And again, a lot of this is just take your time on the turns that have very divisive plays. If you can choose to full trade and potentially sacrifice your burn plan or go full face and sacrifice your board plan, you really need to give respect to both of those lines of play. And I think that Texas Tech took the board plan. I don't know that I necessarily disagree with that plan overall, but I would have liked to see them consider face as well. At least for
They
a
are
little
going
bit
to
longer.
Pyroblast the Dougie Breaker.
Ooh! I mean, that is the correct thing to do here with full knowledge of both hands. But I don't
You're
think...
never winning the game.
No. It's not a winning play. There's no way Texas Tech is winning this game, but... I mean, you might as well take every opportunity that you can. Okay, sure.
Ultra Soar. That is not a Yogg-Saron, that is a Mana Worm, and Texas Tech cannot do anything here, and it looks like Suny Canton is going to get onto the board with their first win.
No Tempo Mages are playing Yogg-Saron, correct?
No. Yogg-Saron is way too slow to be played in Tempo Mage, and Yogg-Saron is not as good anymore as it once was in its former glory, where everyone was playing it in all of the Druid decks and all of the Mage decks, and even Warrior decks.
He was beautiful. He was a star.
He needed to go.
And now Yasharaj is what we have. Are you happy, Jay?
Yes, I prefer Yasiraj to Yogg any day. Prefer N'Zoth. I prefer Cthulhu.
N'Zoth.
We have Cthulhu. We see more Cthuns in competitive play now than we do Yogg-Sarons.
That's true. That's actually true. We saw Cthulhu Priest last week, which was...
Priest?
Yeah. It was a Cthulhu Spiteful Priest.
Oh, I see. I've seen the Cthulhu Spiteful Druid, which is really cute and unique. And what I love about that is if you get the Spiteful Summoner and you summon the Cthulhu, it keeps the stats from inside of the deck, which is really cool and unique. And one thing I found out is if you're playing the Cthulhu Spiteful Druid and you have Prince Kaliseth in it, if you play Prince Kaliseth but then you play a Cthulhu card later, it doesn't show that +1/+1 in the animations.
Really?
Yes. So if your Cthulhu is a 6/6 and you buffed it up to an 8/8,
yeah,
it will not show that it was a 7/7 to a 9/9. It will show that it was a 6/6 to an 8/8.
Interesting.
So maybe sometimes you can catch your opponent off guard with that one extra damage. You know, they're thinking, all right, Cthulhu has 14 attack. I can afford to be at 15 health. And then, never know. It could happen.
This has been a PSA for Cthulhu deck.
Tweet at Team Tespa if that's happened to you.
He hasn't rotated yet. Play him while you can. We'll be right back with game number 3 of this series right after this. Don't go anywhere. back to the Hearthstone Collegiate Championships. My name's Cora. Joining me is Dr. Chickaninky. We're about to get into game number 3 of Suny Canton versus Texas Tech. Jay, how's it going?
It's going well.
Yeah.
I see you holding your coffee over there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Very very warm, very inviting. You're at the
yes.
hearth. You're at the inn, making sure everyone knows that they can pull up a seat beside you and play some Hearthstone.
Please do. We've got plenty of room.
Yeah, no, great to see these teams. It's been really exciting so far. Good to see these matchups.
Put the
They've been
coffee
some
down
close games. There've been some really close games, and it's exciting to see the different strategies brought by different collegiate programs in different schools. And it's interesting to see how many of these players have decided that they want to leave Warlock up. Now, we haven't seen the Warlocks yet from either school, but, you know, the Warlock, it's Warlock. It's going to make an impact.
We have seen some of the counter strategies in this series. It is 1-1. Both Suny Canton and Texas Tech have found wins with their Spiteful Summoner Priest decks. And now Texas Tech will be back on that Mage for the second game in a row. Suny Canton going to bring out the Cube Warlock.
Bringing out the Warlock. Suny Canton going to try and show Texas Tech why you need to respect your Guldans and Nemzis and ban them away. But, you know, if there's any deck that can beat this Control Warlock and Cube Lock, Secret Mage is one of those decks for the reason that they kind of don't have to worry about Void Lord. They can just say, you know what, you may have that Void Lord on the board on turn 6 or 5. I'm just going to ignore that and hit you in the face with my burn.
6 damage to face. Doesn't matter how many points of taunt you have on the field. But Suny Canton does have tools to play around this. Of course, 2 copies of Dark Pact. You have 2 copies of the Lesser Amethyst Spellstones. And Blood Reaver Gul'dan itself, if you can get Siphon Life after playing it, then you can gain a significant amount of health. So there is some counterplay for Suny Canton. Texas Tech going to be looking for the early pressure plays, Mana Worms, Arcanologists, really thin out the deck if possible, and then find Alaneth.
It's really going to come down to how much chip damage Texas Tech can get in with their early game minions, as you were mentioning. Now, they don't have Mana Worm on 1. They do have Sorcerer's Apprentice on 2, and Sorcerer's Apprentice, if it connects face, is going to do a fair bit of damage over time, as for the reason it's kind of a little difficult to clear up.
Yeah.
There's not really too many 1-health minions in the Texas Tech deck, except for Cabal Lackey, but, you know, even at that point, they can play around Defile, and they also have Counterspell, and that's one important thing that Texas Tech was looking to set up for here. And a lot of times, that's one of the ways you can really snowball this matchup out of control, is if you go Mana Worm on 1, Arcanologist on 2, Kirin Tor into Counterspell, where they can't Hellfire it unless they have coin. And obviously, as we see, Texas Tech does have access to that coin, so Counterspell is going to be even more annoying for Suny Canton to deal with. But kind of a weak start coming from Texas Tech here. They only can play the 3-2, and Suny Canton is just tapping away, looking for those resources, not worried about getting hit with any of the minions.
Yeah, this unfortunately is an early game very reminiscent of Texas Tech's previous game with this Mage, where up against Priest they had managed to deal, I believe, about 6 points of damage before turn 8. It was not an impressive showing for this Secret Mage deck, and unfortunately they haven't found a lot of their early aggressive tools. They have a lot of burn, but they don't have chip damage, they don't have repetitive minion damage, and they don't have Alaneth to find them additional burn that they need, because they have a lot of damage here, but it's nowhere near enough. So right now, Texas Tech needs to be applying pressure consistently, as they are the aggressive deck in this matchup. But Suny Canton very shortly is going to be opening up powerful plays of their own with the Possessed Villagers into the Void Lords from the deck, the Doom Guards. Mountain Giant is going to be playable in 2 turns.
And one of the awkward things that Texas Tech has to do here is they have to commit a Frostbolt onto the Mistress of Mixers just to make sure that Sorcerer's Apprentice lives for an extra turn to get an additional extra 3 damage, which, if it does live for an extra turn, it's kind of like Texas Tech made up for that Frostbolt damage that initially would have gone face. But another very interesting decision point here for Texas Tech was which secret they wanted to play. They played Counterspell, well, they played around, let's say, something like a Amethyst Spellstone, but if they played Explosive Runes, they did play around this.
This actually is now looking a little bit dire for Suny Canton. They've picked up both Void Lords out of the deck, meaning that the only demon left is 1 copy of Doomguard, and they have now a completely dead Possessed Villager in hand. And honestly, they might not even want to play one of them, because Doomguard from the deck is not going to be super useful.
And Texas Tech is going to have a great turn coming out from their side where they can go counterspell, develop the Cabal Crystal Runner, which means that they don't have to worry about that board dying to any kind of shenanigans. And they also they have an opposing board, and when Lackey comes down, you know, they get that 8 free damage in, and then they have the 9 burst damage from their hand, and maybe even, let's say, they pick up another Fireball or maybe a Pyroblast from this Glyph. This game could be just over in the next matter of couple turns, and there's the Firelands Portal.
Damage from this
It's
Glyph.
a lot of damage.
Polymorph from this Glyph is phenomenal. Suny Canton, of course, will pull the Doomguard from this. They didn't have any better plays than the Possessed Villager that turn. And ideally, Villager goes into Sorcerer's Apprentice, and the Doomguard comes out and they clear off the Cabal Crystal Runner. So it is still a very powerful play, but with no Dark Pacts in hand, nothing cheap to proc that counterspell by any means, and both Void Lords in hand, their defensive tools are limited. Like, they really don't have any. They're 0.
Actually, I just realized that double Void Lord is in the hand. They don't even need Polymorph. These minions are going to be able to hit face again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Doomguard's going to come out, but it's not going to kill you, so...
Doomguard answers a 5/5, and then you got the Skelemancer. And this it's actually a
Really
little
good
funny
for
how the coin Firelands Portal worked out for them. Because since no Void Lords can come out, the Firelands minion was able to connect to face for the most part. And this I mean, is it just over?
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Close.
If
we could get
very close.
I mean, Fireball off of Glyph, you could do. No.
I mean, I think you definitely Valet this turn for the reason that they could proc the counterspell, meaning Valet won't be useful in the later turns. So I like to see Valet come down at least, maybe Frostbolt ping, so you fit an extra ping in, maybe even play the Glyph this turn. You know, I just want to see damage put into Suny Canton's face.
Yes.
And I think Texas Tech is going to do it. It's just, what's the most optimal way to do it? What's the way that really uses mana efficiency to its best? Is it Frostbolt ping? Is it just Fireball the face? I like using Fireball in the face for the just to make sure that you're using the most expensive cards this turn, and you're saving the cheaper cards for later.
There was also a justification to trading off Skelemancer this turn, and getting the Death Rattle into the 8/8, I believe it is, on your board. But
that only works on your opponent's turn, though.
Oh, it's when they kill it. You're right.
So,
that's a bad card.
That's a bad.
That's a bad
Don't
card.
call Skelemancer bad. I remember a time when Paladin was playing Skelemancer, and they were proud to play Skelemancer.
When was Paladin ever playing Skelemancer?
When Unguru first came out.
Really?
They would play Skelemancer, and you'd steed it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Well, nothing really matters because Suny Canton had none of the resources that they needed to fight this battle. The counterspell meant that the Amethyst Spellstone would not proc. There were no Dark Pacts. There was no early game interaction, even though Texas Tech's early game was pretty weak as well. Just being able to stick a Sorcerer's Apprentice and the Cabal Crystal Runner was enough pressure on the board. They didn't need Mana Worm. They didn't need Arcanologist. Suny Canton was tapping themselves closer to death, and Texas Tech was just able to finish the job.
Sometimes that's just what Mage does. Sometimes Mage, it gets that early game, and it gets just a little bit of chip damage in there, but then that burn just piles on, and it's just enough damage to end the game. And we saw there, it was a little fortunate that Void Lord could not come out of the pool, so they were able to push the Firelands Portal minion damage. But in most cases, sometimes Void Lord comes out, and it's still not enough. So we can see that Secret Mage strategy end up working for Texas Tech, and it's something that a lot of players have adopted and tried to refine more and more. There's been different lists from all over. Some of them run 1 Pyroblast, some of them just run 2 Firelands Portals, and it's good to see that the Warlock's been taken out.
The Warlock has been defeated, but Texas Tech is left with their own Warlock as their final deck. So Suny Canton is going to battle with the Mirror first and foremost.
Get your coffee ready, Cora. This could be a doozy. Sometimes this game ends on turns 5 and 6 with a bunch of Doomguards hitting face, and sometimes this game goes to fatigue.
Honestly, this matchup is kind of fun for me. Because you're absolutely correct. It can go so many different ways, and it can be an absolute blowout, but it can also be very back and forth. And you get to the point where all of the resources have been played. You're both in fatigue. You're left with Blood Reaver Gul'dans, and every little decision that you've made during that game matters so much and added up to get you to that point that it can be a very intricate matchup.
This matchup is very intricate, and I think even to this day, a lot of pro players, including myself, don't always play this matchup to its most optimal potential. There's so many different lines of play. There's so many different decisions. With the inclusion of Mountain Giant, it makes you feel as if you want to tap more to make sure that Mountain Giant's online, which I can't blame either players. If they know both lists have Mountain Giant, they're going to want to respond to one player's Mountain Giant with another player's Mountain Giant. And I believe that Texas Tech is going to be able to play the Mountain Giant first, just for the reason that they are on the play. They had it. They could tap. They're going to play it on 4 mana. Suny Canton, unfortunately, cannot coin out that Mountain Giant, although I know they wish they would love to. And this is one of the reasons that the Doomsayer tech included into the Q block has become a very crucial and important part, is for this exact reason right here. Doomsayer can be played into a turn where they know Giant wants to come down, prevents Giant from coming down, and then after that, they get to play their own Giant, which is just so... It's crazy how important it is to get your Giant online first, for the reason that Giant reads deal 8 damage.
Yep.
And dealing 8 damage in a control mirror that might go to fatigue is really good.
Giant deals 8 damage. Doomsayer, phenomenal against aggro, and in this matchup allows you to maintain priority, which Suny Canton definitely needs, as they are down 1-2 game deficit. They need to win this one to take this series to Game 5. This is...
It's a little awkward. The different lines of play are Possessed Lackey, hoping to get, say, a Void Lord out. They're gonna take 8 damage no matter what they do this turn. They could play the Giant just to contest the Giant. They could get Lackey down. It thins out their deck a little bit. They're trying to find Gul'dan or N'Zoth, which obviously is going to be the ultimate condition later on in the game. It's just really awkward right now because of that Doomsayer. The Doomsayer has put Texas Tech into such an awkward position that Suny Canton is going to be able to capitalize on so much. And Suny Canton, if they want to, can just tap and play another Giant.
This
Interesting. So they decide not to tap. It's either because maybe they were rushing that turn and weren't thinking about the tap into Giant, or maybe it was a nod to fatigue. Maybe they were saying, you know what, we've got these 2 Giants down now. This game might come to fatigue. We've got N'Zoth. We've got Cube. All we need is Weapon right now. But these Giants are most likely going to get us there. And even if not, maybe Texas Tech has to tap for answers and live. Yeah. I mean, I think Suny Canton should have tapped there, but
I agree.
There is a nod to fatigue there.
They're already so far ahead that I don't know that fatigue is a realistic scenario now. But Texas Tech has taken the best 2-turn line that they had available to them. They're going at the Villager here, and then they can Carnivorous Cube whatever comes out, and then Dark Pact the Cube to now get 2 more copies of Doomguard. Ideally, they would have gotten Void Lords and had many Void Lords on the board here, but at the very least, they can kill off one of these Mountain Giants with their Doom Guards and heal back up to a relatively safe 22 life. It does feel really bad that they are going to have to trade in all of these Doom Guards, but now they have 3 Doom Guards in the pool for the Blood Reaver Gul'dan later on. So if they can get this Mountain Giant off the board and stabilize, then they themselves can start to potentially build up their own board state. But Suny Canton just is not going to let that happen.
So there were actually some very interesting decisions just made. You were talking about clearing up the Mountain Giant, which is what Texas Tech ended up going for, but there was also the potential line of play where Texas Tech could have just shoved both the Doom Guards face. Could have put Suny Canton down to 11 health. Now, the risk with that is there's 16 damage coming at the other end, and Texas Tech was at 22, I believe.
Yes.
And with them being at 22, it would be 6 damage for lethal. Now, that would be... Honestly, I don't think anything Suny Canton would have been able to do that turn would have been lethal. Not even Doomguard, just a tempoed out Doomguard. It would have been one off. So with that, it forces Suny Canton to trade into, say, the Doomguards.
That sets up for Hellfire.
With that, it sets up for Hellfire to clear off the Giants. If they have Hellfire or Defile, something like that, they could clear off the Giants with that, since they do have the Hellfire. Or, I mean, maybe they ignore one of the Doomguards, they push another extra damage face, or then can trade in Hellfire. It would have pushed more damage in the long run, and let's say they ignore them, well then, next turn, 11 health, they're just dead to Hellfire. So that was a very important decision. Another thing is, I don't know Texas Tech's deck list exactly, but you see there that Suny Canton opted to cube off their 8/6. And that tells me that Suny Canton knows there's no Spellbreaker. I think that'd be a really risky play if there was a Spellbreaker. So I think Suny Canton knows there's no Spellbreaker, but it's kind of interesting to think, you know, that 8/6 was hitting face.
Yes.
There hasn't been any cards played that damage Texas Tech's own face. So there's no potential for Spellstone to kill it unless it was, let's say, Kobold Librarian into killing it. Or let's say Kobold Librarian into Spellstone into Defile killing it. Very 3-card niche kind of combinations that would have killed it. So there was some merit to just facelessing the 8/6 and saying, hey, look, if you can't kill these 8/6, you're just going to die next turn. Because they do have Doomguard as well.
So essentially what we're seeing here is a series of defensive plays made by both of these teams where very aggressive plays were also options.
Yes.
Where there potentially could have been setups for lethal outs over the course of a couple of turns for both of these teams in consecutive turns. And they both decided to play very defensively instead. That's one of the reasons why this matchup can be done very quickly, but it can also go all the way to fatigue. And I think that, you know, some players just don't want to take the risks. Collegiate players in general, I have found, play significantly more defensively. It's not going to matter ultimately as Suny Canton got on the board very quickly with the Mountain Giants. They are going to close out this game pretty quickly, but I do like what you were saying, and it did pop into my head a little bit as it was happening. The double Doomguards to face forces, I would think, the double Mountain Giant clear, which forces the Hellfire out from Texas Tech, and with another Doomguard in their hand, potentially leaves Suny Canton in a position where they could get punished if they're playing then maybe a little bit too aggressively. It was just a fast game, but again, not an easy one.
So many decisions in just those couple of turns that could have changed the outcome of the game, and it's one of the beautiful things of Q-Block is that it's one of those decks that has so many branching decisions that a lot of times you can be punished for making, let's say, 1 to 2 wrong decisions, or you can be rewarded for taking risks that maybe some players might not necessarily take. And I like to say in every Q-Block mirror, just go back and watch it. Just go back and look. Go back and see, well, you know, what could I have done differently? What could my opponent have done differently? What were some different things that could have happened in that game? Because even in those 2 turns, and something could have changed.
It is so difficult to know in the moment which of those lines of play is optimal. It's so difficult to know without knowing what your opponent has in hand, of course, without knowing what they have access to, what is the correct line of play here. But it's something that the more that you run into it, the more that you can start to get a feel for. This ended badly for me last time. Maybe I should do it differently and see how it works out this time. And it really is just something that comes from experience. So both of these teams played it very defensively. It worked out for Suny Canton. They are going to tie up this series 2-2, and we are seeing one player actually switching accounts now. So we're going to go to a short break, but after we come back, the conclusion to this series, we're going to get right back into Game 5. Tied series between Suny Canton and Texas Tech. We're going into game number 5, and it's the Warlock on the side of Texas Tech that has yet to get a win, but they do have one more shot. Remains to be seen what Suny Canton will be bringing to the table here to try to take out this Warlock, though leaving the Warlock up means that it's likely a deck that they think has a good shot. Sup, Jay?
What's up? How you doing, girl? Yeah, no, they both left the Warlocks up, so they're both going for that Warlock strategy. I believe one of them actually has a Druid deck.
You're right. Suny Canton's last deck is a Druid.
last deck is Druid, so it's going to be interesting to see what Druid they opted to go for. Is it a Jade Druid? Maybe they started to feel that the naturalized Jade Druid is going to help them favored, but no, we're going to see
a
spiteful Cthulhu Ultimate Infestation. Dude. Prince on 2. Cthulhu's chosen on 4. You name a Cthulhu card, it's being played in this deck. Druid. And this is going to be an interesting matchup because I have played 0 games of this. I have played 0 games of this matchup.
Is this Cthulhu Spiteful Priest?
Yes.
This is cool.
Oh, no, Druid. Cthulhu Spiteful Druid.
Yeah, whatever.
Don't whatever me. We are looking at one of the glorious things to come up onto this TV screen in front of us. And you're going to whatever me?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Whatever.
Now, the only unfortunate thing about this deck is if you draw one UI, you better hope you don't draw the other Ultimate Infestation, because that is the only spell in your deck. Now, for those of you that don't know what this deck does, it does a lot of glorious things. It plays Prince Keleseth. It plays Spiteful Summoner. It plays a large Cthulhu package. And then at the top end, it plays Ultimate Infestation.
Usher of Souls. That's a Cthulhu card that they don't play. Because
Usher
they
of
can't.
Souls. Twin Emperor Veclor? Which one? Wait, which one's Usher of Souls?
You said name a Cthulhu card, they play it. Usher of Souls, you can't play it. I think it's the Warlock one.
Oh, you're just... Oh, okay.
Okay,
I see what you're going.
Smart ass.
They would play it if they
You'd
could.
be used to it by now. Yeah, they would play it if they could. So, Texas Tech is going to be playing reactively for the large portion of this game. Suny Canton will get on the board very early and try to leverage that board lead for some early chip damage and try to close out the game with the Cthulhu if they can, but they may not even necessarily need it because they have a good amount of other large minions that are playable in the deck. Texas Tech... This is going to be tough. Clearly, Suny Canton brought this deck intending to find a win against Warlock, but I'm still seeing a world where Void Lords are just too much for Suny Canton to get past. And with Skull of the Minari, Void Lords are now a reality on turn 6.
Yeah. Skull of Minari, even turn 4 with the coin Skull of Minari.
Yeah.
Now, what I wouldn't mind seeing here is leaving this Raven up and then going into the Doomsayer in this turn coming up. And then they're going to be able to play the Mountain Giant on hopefully an open board. A lot of times, this type of Druid doesn't have an answer for this Doomsayer that's going to be played here. The reason I say that is because I believe their only kind of damage inherently from their hand that they can play would either be Ultimate Infestation, which obviously costs 10 mana, so they can't do that, and Cthulhu's Disciple. Disciple of Cthulhu. Cthulhu's Disciple.
Yeah.
The person who does discipling for Cthulhu. He is the only one that can actually deal damage to this Doomsayer besides the hero power. And you know how I was mentioning earlier, you don't want to draw both of those Ultimate Infestations? Suny Canton did not get the memo. They decided to draw both of the Ultimate Infestations. Spiteful Summoner is now a 6-mana 4/4 unless they are teching in a Spreading Plague, which I doubt they are.
And to rub some dirt on the wound, they pick up the Spiteful Summoner immediately after the second Ultimate Infestation. So, not a great start for Suny Canton.
No, this is just an abysmal start from Suny Canton. I mean, are they going to play a 6-mana 4/4? Wait,
that's a good question. Are they?
There's a bunch of weak turns going on here. The question is, if you don't play that Spiteful Summoner now, when are you ever going to be able to play it? Because the way the minions are going to pan out is you play it this way, you fit into hero power. Next turn, you either go Spiteful Summoner again, which takes up your whole turn, or you go Tar Creeper. What they could have done is hoped they played Spiteful Summoner this turn, show their opponent they have both Ultimate Infestations in their hand. And then next turn they can go Cthulhu's Chosen and Tar Creeper, which is 7, which would be 7 mana. And then they can go into Lich King, and hopefully by then that's answered the Mountain Giant. Now, one thing that I actually am now looking at is Texas Tech is at 15 health.
Yeah.
I think 2 Mountain Giants beats the 4-2 with Divine Shield in the racing game, but I mean, maybe there's a world where Suny Canton can connect this 4-2 a couple times, then get them with the UI. I don't think we live in that world.
2 Mountain Giants definitely beats this, and I think Spirit Singer Umbra plus double Mistress of Mixtures plus Dark Pact super beats it.
That is also fair. That does say no to the burn plan.
Oh, no.
No. Hold up. I've got 2 8/8s and a lot of heal. And what do you have? And they said 6 mana 4/4.
Hold up. Cthulhu's Chosen is great, but Mistress of Mixtures is the best card of all time.
Hold up, Cthulhu's Chosen. I'm going to let you have your Divine Shield and all.
But
let me show you 2 Mountain Giants.
my Death Knight is better than your Cthulhu. Yeah, this is really just a rough situation for Suny Canton. Keep in mind, they do have a great amount of follow-up. So Texas Tech is essentially at a very safe life total looking at the cards that they have in hand. And they have the Skull of the Minari, but they have no further pressure other than these Mountain Giants. So if Suny Canton can clear off the Mountain Giants, they have Lich King, they have Ultimate Infestation, they have the card draw, they have the threats still. Texas Tech just has the threats that they're working with on the board. And whatever they may happen to draw into.
But the issue is, how does Suny Canton remove these Mountain Giants?
That's a great question.
I mean, Lich King's going to remove one, but I think by that point, Suny Canton might just be dead.
Lich King can give you any number of fantastic Death Knight cards,
it
which
can
may be able to swing this.
give you Death and Decay.
Yep.
That could potentially help with the clear up.
It can give you Doom Pact. It can give you Death Coil. There's a lot of things that Lich King can.
Obliterate.
Yeah,
a really good one from Lich King.
I don't want to take 8 damage.
You're taking it either way.
No.
This one takes 7.
Can't make me.
I mean, they have to play Lich King here, or they're dead.
Yes. And then Texas Tech is still going to be setting Suny Canton down to 7.
Well, if they get Obliterate, they can Hero Power and then Obliterate.
Oh my gosh, genius!
I mean, they have to hope for it, right? I mean, what else can they do?
You're hoping for Doom Pact off of Lich King. You have to Lich King, you're hoping for Doom Pact, and then you can Doom Pact and play Tar Creeper on the same turn.
That is fair.
And then you can play Ultimate Infestation.
Let's see what it is. Death and Decay.
That's not
maybe
enough.
if they trade the 8/7 in instead of the 8/2.
There's always a chance.
There's always.
It's always a possibility. I mean, this is really rough for Suny Canton because Texas Tech has no other threats.
Nothing.
They have nothing besides these Mountain Giants, but one Mountain Giant plus a Faceless Manipulator was just enough to completely demolish this Druid deck.
That is so... That's just so funny to think about. All it took was a giant and a dream. And it's getting Texas Tech there.
The American Warlock dream.
Because the rest of their hand is just healing.
Yeah. Well, but if they play Mistress of Mixtures, then they're healing Suny Canton too. So you probably don't want to do that right now.
No, probably not. I mean, the funny part that we can see is if they just play Tar Creeper, they play Twilight Elder, and maybe even Death and Decay, just to set up for an Ultimate Infestation kill onto the Giant next turn.
Yeah.
Texas Tech doesn't have a way to answer the Tar
They're still not dead.
Creeper. Because they can't defile to clear it off. They don't have 2 defiles. They can't set something to 1 health to defile it off, because they would have to trade the Umbra in. And they can't play Mistress because they have Umbra on the board. So they actually can't answer the Tar Creeper without putting the Mountain Giant in.
So Suny Canton is going to play Tar Creeper here, 100%.
They have to.
If Texas Tech finds something off the top to be able to answer it, then so be it.
And they're opting to Hero Power. I like this.
Yeah.
They're opting to Hero Power for the reason that maybe the only way we can see Texas Tech can't actually answer the Tar Creeper, even with the 3/1 on board. But this way, you know, if they did have an answer, it's going to be less likely.
Okay, Lackey Dark Pact.
Lackey Dark Pact into Doomguard.
Game, maybe?
But what if it's Void Lord? We've still got a game going on.
And then we have an Ultimate Infestation into the Giant, which then
Heals
things
5.
get a little bit wacky. So if Texas Tech pulls Void Lord here, then Suny Canton maybe has an in.
For time frame's sake, Doomguard would be great here. For a spectacle of wonders.
For Suny Canton's sake.
For Suny Canton's sake. There's also tap, because if you find Doomguard, it's lethal immediately. The tap was actually interesting to do the tap first, because if you find Doomguard immediately, you win the game.
Yep.
If you find Void Lord, you decrease the odds.
Oh, it's Void Lord.
And it's Void Lord, and we still got a game going on.
Oh, you can
Suny
see
Canton,
Kyo in the front
you
there.
can see Kyo in the front just saying, we're still in this game. Don't worry. Don't worry, y'all. We're still in this game.
Because Texas Tech has to trade over here. So Ultimate Infestation goes into the Mountain Giant. Suny Canton goes up to 10. And now they've got a fresh hand to work with as well.
And Texas Tech has nothing.
Well, okay, they have... No, they have nothing.
They have nothing right
yeah, they've got
now.
nothing. They can coin Gul'dan and bring back nothing, but then they get, Siphon Life for 3 damage per turn.
Doomcaller.
They're playing Doomcaller.
Wait,
oh
and
my
there's
goodness.
Malfurion the Pestilence. This game is going to go on for a bit.
That actually is true. We can pull up 1/5s, 1/5 taunts.
All right, get your coffee back. I
and
know
then we
you
get-
put your
oh my
coffee
goodness.
down.
No,
You thought
no,
the game was
I'm
over. But
grabbing.
get the coffee
I'm
back.
grabbing. The feather pen is down and the coffee is up.
I picked the feather pen back up.
This is... Oh my gosh. I don't think I've ever seen a Cube Warlock have so few threats.
Well, they had 2, but they finally got answered after 7 turns.
Oh my goodness. Mountain Giant took Lich King, Death and Decay, Tar Creeper, Ultimate Infestation to kill 2 Mountain Giants. Okay, the cube is great. The cube is pretty nice.
The one thing with Cube, though, is they have to be careful doing this. And they definitely have to Dark Pact off the Cube for the reason that most of the Druid lists run double Spellbreaker.
All right, Dark
I'll even burn a
Arakoa,
card.
whatever.
They kind of have to go Malfurion for taunts here, I believe. I could be wrong. Maybe there's another line of play they can look into, but I think it's going to have to be taunt up, not only because you can start armor gaining to kind of try and get yourself into a more sustainable life total. Suny Canton's going to need to be at a more sustainable life total if they want to have any chance at this game.
They eventually need to be able to play something that will pressure Texas Tech.
Suny Canton's just hoping Texas Tech just still doesn't have anything. And they have to keep tapping, and they still don't find
Miraculously,
anything.
they don't.
I mean,
They've had Skull of the Minari in hand for 7 turns now.
they never really had a chance to play it, I don't think, because they were trying to
No,
maximize
they never had a demon
damage.
in hand.
Well, not only that, but they never had a chance to just play it for fun. They've always wanted to try and
For funsies.
push the
Just to
mountain
get it there.
just for funsies. And opting to armor up.
Okay. I like this. Suny Canton just really trying to find that safe life total so they could eventually play for pressure.
And I'm
Remind me
pretty
again. Doomcaller puts another
sure
copy of Cthulhu in your deck, right?
if Cthulhu is dead.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I remember that because that was one of my favorite cards. And how much damage
3, 6,
can
7,
be put out?
10, 13.
There's no way that Texas Tech can get through with the Hellfires, though, because the Hellfires are going to clean their
No.
1/3s, and if
I'm
you
not
try and do a
seeing-
Defile turn, it's going to clean up your Void Lord, so, yeah.
I mean, I think Hellfire here's fine. Run in 2 of the Void Walkers and a Void Lord. Hellfire off. You're still
I think
sitting
they
pretty.
don't need to use the Hellfires, because it cleans off their own board, and these Void Walkers are going to be very... The Void Walkers are going to be very annoying for Suny Canton to deal with. So I'm not sure if they necessarily had to use a Hellfire there, but they wanted to push this damage, so I don't blame them. I wouldn't mind maybe even seeing a coin cube or a coin skull just to kind of set it up, because I'm not sure when when the coin will become more beneficial to them later on. Maybe one thing Texas Tech also has to consider with clearing off their own board, and this might have been a reason they did it, is let's play MC Tech.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
I was about to say that I would have looked psychic if I said it before they drew it. unfortunately, I said it right as soon as they did draw it. These lists play MC Tech and Double Spellbreaker. They played 2 of both. And sometimes the MC Tech takes
on occasion
a Carnivorous Cube. I would say 1 in 5 universes. Is this a universe? No.
No. This is a weak universe.
This is a universe in which Suny Canton's MC Tech was neglected as a poor child and did not listen to Suny Canton's wish.
It's a sad timeline.
It's a sad MC Tech.
If you're a Suny Canton fan, you hate to see that. Well, they're still at now 12 life.
I just got to keep playing minions.
Buff that Cthulhu a little bit more.
I will say, though, there is probably another MC Tech in this deck. Maybe we get to see the infamous second one. Or is it just lethal?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
yes,
9.
It is just lethal.
14 damage.
Hellfire and Doomguard is going to go ahead and end up this game. And that was a close one.
It was looking like Suny Canton had found a way back into this game, but having both of those ultimate infestations in the opening hand, even though they had the Spiteful Summoner on turn 6, even though Texas Tech had only 2 Mountain Giants for 90% of that game as their threats, Suny Canton still could not get there. I will, however, say that Druid deck looks like a ton of fun.
Oh, it is a lot of fun. I've played it a couple times, and that Druid deck is a lot of fun. However, dodge Mage and dodge Paladin. You don't want to play against those.
Yeah, you're going to get
You better hope your MC
handily
Techs are
dumpstered.
better than Suny Cantons if you want to play against those classes.
You don't have Swipe, you don't have Spreading Plague, any of the anti-aggro tools.
You just
because
have
you're
Cthulhu
playing
cards.
Spiteful, yeah. But in that matchup, should have been pretty good. Unfortunately, it just did not pan out for Suny Canton. So, in their second outing on stream, they are going to lose again. Texas Tech going to take this series 3 games to 2, so congratulations to them. Suny Canton, they're just having a rough go of it in this tournament so far, but I do like that they were very flexible and they completely changed their strategy from when we saw them on stream last week. So they're in the Varsity League. I'm not exactly sure what their record is right now, if they're still potentially in the tournament or not, but either way, I've enjoyed getting a chance to watch them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how diverse their strategies have been, because I remember last week they went for a hard target Warlock strategy, if I remember correctly.
They played a Freeze Mage. They played.
Or did they go for a hard target Paladin lineup?
I believe they were the Paladin strategy.
They were the Paladin strategy. So it's really nice to see.
Don't quote me on that.
Okay. It's still nice to see that these players are willing to adapt. They're willing to learn. They're willing to try and use different strategies. And as Cora reads her book intently.
Yeah, they banned Warlock.
Okay.
They had Paladin and Mage. Those are the only 2 decks we saw from them. And I remember the Mage was a Freeze Mage. The Paladin was OTK.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's cool to see that they're willing to adapt. They're willing to try new things. They're willing to make sure that, maybe the strategy didn't work last week. Let's try something new until it works, until we find a strategy that works, and then maybe we can stick with that.
Well, Texas Tech have come out triumphant this time, 3-2 victory, and we've got them on the line for a chance to ask them some questions. Congratulations, guys. How are you feeling with that 3-2 nail-biter of a victory?
Oh, we're feeling like we're back on track to making playoffs because we're 1-2 now. So let's try to keep winning.
All right, so started off maybe a little bit rough, but after this victory, you guys do still have a chance to make it into the playoffs. Are you feeling the morale coming back up now, and maybe you've changed up your strategy a little bit over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think this week we spent a lot more time actually preparing our lineup. Last week it was really hard. So as long as we keep doing that,
Yeah, well, it seems like you guys are starting to find what works and to have that strategy really click. So that's really awesome to see. Going into game number 5, up against Cthulhu Druid with the Warlock. Walk me through what your thought process was there, because that's a weird matchup.
I pretty much just read over their deck lists 6 times in a row, and I didn't really have a strategy or anything. Just play with the card they got.
You know what? That's a great way to look at it. Play with the cards that you got. That's ultimately all that you can do. But talk to us a little bit. What has it been like for you guys playing as a team, and how did you actually come together and form your team for the tournament?
I've really liked playing with these guys, even though we started off rough. Came together because the varsity program started, so we pretty much just got the best talent we knew about at Tech.
Awesome. Well, it seems like you guys are starting to gel. You finally picked up your first win in the tournament, so hopefully you can just keep that momentum going. But congratulations again, and good luck moving forward.
Thank you. You guys are a good one.
Thank you.
All right, Texas Tech with their first win in this tournament, and it was a good one. I didn't see any glaring mistakes with their play. I thought that they played pretty cleanly. They had a nice lineup. There were definitely some tough decision-making points in some of their games, as their secret mage, for instance, deciding whether to trade off on board or to go face. Not easy. So it does seem like to me maybe they're starting to hit their stride. They've got that first win under their belt now. They've certainly got a long road ahead of them, having lost their first 2 series last week, but maybe they can bounce back.
You know, it's also important that they play these games either recorded or on stream, for the reason that now they can go back and look at those games and say, hey, what were some of those decision points that we could have done differently? Could we have maybe gone face more with the mage and ended up the game with more burn? Maybe in the warlock mirror, could we have gone face more in that? Yeah. A lot of times it does come down to the value trades versus face. When was it more important to take that trade? When was it more important to go face? And, you know, it's really important to have these games at access to you at any point that they could just go back and watch as a collective team and maybe even talk it out with each other and talk it out with their teammates. Maybe one of them says, you know what, we should have gone face there, and the other one says, whoa, 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 we should have value traded there, and then they start arguing, but, you know, at the end of the day, they're teammates, so they'll get it back together, and they'll be fine.
It can definitely be uncomfortable, but it's one of the best things that you can do to improve as a player is go back and look at your games, even the ones that you lost, especially the ones that you made mistakes in. Go back and learn from them. But that is going to be it for our second series of the day. I believe we've got another Twitter question. Let's see who this one is from. K. Borofin. It says, what is your most favorite emote in Hearthstone and why? Oh,
I have a
do you have
really
one?
Good question. Yeah, my favorite emote is Squelch.
I like it.
Squelch is the best emote because it silences all of the emotes. I'm not an emote gamer.
Yeah.
If I do emote, it's because I'm joking around with friends. I don't typically emote on ladder or in tournament play unless I know the person really well. Just kind of, I guess, a BM thing. Even though some people play the game differently, they play to their style.
Yeah.
Some people like to have more fun with it than I do. But
I think you're just having fun in your own
I'm having fun in my
way.
own not emoting way. So my favorite emote is Squelch, even though I don't typically use it.
Okay, that's fair. I'm very much the same. I'll occasionally, if my opponent greets me, I'll greet him back, and then hit him with the Squelch. And then usually I'll only emote, you know, if I'm doing like the 80 gold friend quest, for instance.
Yeah.
Which I do with my dad a lot because he plays a lot of Hearthstone as well. And then you just emote the hell out of it.
You know how you've hit the Raza Priest button in the past?
Yeah.
Do that with the emotes whenever you're playing against family.
Threaten non-stop in that game. But yeah, other than that, not too much of an emoter myself, but I can certainly appreciate a well-timed emote. But thank you very much for your question. If you have any questions for us, tweet at Team Tespa, go on Facebook /Team Tespa, and if your question is chosen to be featured on the stream, then you will receive the Dalaran Flame card back. It's pretty snazzy. Yeah, keep those questions coming. We love answering them, and we've still got one more